live stream. Want to say thank you to all you wonderful people that are joining us today. Do me a favor, and for those of you that are joining in, whether you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, any of your socials that we're connected to today, do me a favor, talk to us a little bit about where you're coming from. We want to hear from you. Again, the reason that we're doing this is because this is all about community today. So it's all about you. We're all here today, and I have some amazing, wonderful people with me. Look at this. Look at these great faces on here. They're all over the place. Look at this. So I got Joy. Joy, how are you today?
I'm fabulous. Thank you so much for having me, Juan.
This is going to be fun, Joy. I'm looking forward. I got Wes Spencer with me here.
Juan, what is up, my friend? I think we just nicknamed you Dom Juan. So what's going on, my friend?
You guys actually, funny story. My middle name is Adon. And so if you flip it around, it is Adon Juan. So it's just funny that you say that. Henry, what's up, my man?
Hey, man. How are you doing?
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for including me in this.
100%. And then Matt, my friend, my good friend, Matt Lee. What's up, brother?
Man, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for getting this all kick-started and, helping my parole guy let me out so I could do this. But no, it's fantastic. I'm home. I'm actually in my home studio for the next week and a half, 2 weeks. It's nuts. I'm going to get a lot of content put out and stuff done. So I'm in a really good space right now, Juan, if I'm honest. So
all of you guys always make me super jealous because your backgrounds are so fantastic and I live on this virtual background. I'm just like, all right, I got to fix this. That's my next.
Wait, that's not your background? That's not your real house?
I thought it was yours.
Oh, man.
You outed yourself.
Yeah, right.
What even is reality now?
Yeah, I know, right? So the reason for this live stream, and I think that this is really, this is something that I talked about 2023 being the year of education and the year of community. And I really wanted to start this off by doing just that, right? Bringing great voices together to talk about things. And one of the major things that I wanted to address was some of the things that we did in 2022 and some of those big takes. And so we got some amazing voices here today and lots of people that are jumping into the chat. But I definitely want to make sure that we got an hour. I know it's going to be tough. All of these amazing people all at the same time is going to be really hard to put us all in. But this is a beginning of something special. And with that being said, I want to start by looking back. Let's look back at 2022 and let's have a conversation, you guys, as a group here, as a community. For those of you that are jumping in, pop your comments in here because we want to think about what happened in 2022 that was a really big thing. And so we're going to lead off the conversation with Joy. Joy, what's your take on 2022 and what did you see? What are some of the most impactful things that we can talk about in a community that really means something to MSPs, vendors, and VARs and all the different people?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think as evidenced by the group on this call and many others in the community, what I saw was a maturation of the amount of information sharing. And I think when I was referring to it earlier last week, we were talking amongst us and I'm like, it felt like no man left behind. Like that became our theme finally in 2022 is that we're looking at every MSP from the small ones to the big ones and understanding what it takes for us as a community to raise up with that education, like in a way that was just unprecedented. The amount of information sharing for the right reasons has been just everywhere that you look. The visibility of that has been really impactful. Okay.
All right, y'all. Joy just pulled my string on this one, so I'm not even going to give y'all any time for this to bake in. Right?
Matt's in right off the bat.
Seriously, like a lawnmower, that single fire, right? No, seriously though, I think you're right on. We have not only a change in how much information is being shared and for the right reasons, which true story, but we're also having an adoption and an absorption of that and actually putting that into practice. Like we really are on that precipice of actually driving towards something. So I think you're 100% correct on that. But then to the right reason conversation, I think that's one that really triggers me so much is that marketing and or sales and or traditional space wants to always have this call to action, this tying it to numbers. And then we measure those nums and but if I teach them, they will grow. And if I teach them, they will be more secure. And if I teach them, they will be able to do this in a way that moves them forward. There's not a great way to anchor that. So I love that for the right reason is just education. and then they'll
Yeah.
grow, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh gosh, sorry.
I gotta give a shout
No.
out to my friend Eric Bowles, that's here in chat. Eric is a great teacher of that exactly, Matt. Of like, just
Yeah, for sure.
give away, give freely, don't gate, and that karma comes back to you, right? People are always like, that's where you build the. If you're in marketing today, or you're with a vendor today, and you're listening, and you're like,
Yeah.
how do I get mind share? Just start sharing.
Yeah.
That's the
Teach what you
way.
know.
We're,
That's it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
we're all doing that right here, right now, right? Like that's what we're doing is just that, you know. I like where you're going with
The
that,
amount
Joy. I
of
think it's great. Oh, go ahead, Henry.
No, I was just going to say the amount of community building that has happened over this last year, where people can really kind of open up and say, you know, hey, I have a weakness here. Let's talk about this. So let's have some empathy for each other, and how do we accomplish
Yeah.
these, you know, overcome
That's it.
these
Is
together?
we can't be making each other wrong, and I think that was kind of what was happening, is that we were pointing to like competition in the industry
Yeah.
and saying, well, they're not doing this, they're not doing that, and we have finally migrated to that place of we're all in this together. We all have to look better and improve our game. And
Love
the
that.
biggest thing for me is that I'm the first one to say I don't know what I don't know. You know, I'm
Oh my
not going to
gosh.
walk around acting like I know everything. And
Yeah.
the people that do kind of scare me a little bit. Like we all are students.
That's why
constantly.
I hate
Red
the term
flags.
expert, right? That triggers me. Sorry, Henry, I didn't mean to run over you, but that's why I hate expert. I'm not an expert. I am an expert student. I am an
Yeah.
expert of understanding change. I'm an expert of seeing change happening and continuing to, change those pieces that I react to. But anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's it's like a major red flag as soon as you see someone come in with that bravado and like they know everything and they have all the solutions and they alone can fix it, and it's like, okay, well, I need to stay away from you.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. You know, I oftentimes I hear that a lot, right? And you know, even when we created our master classes this year, you know, one of the things that I was thinking about was looking back to last year. It's like we aren't a jack of all trades, but we can become a master of some, right? And you have to be really good at those things. But I think to your point, you know, through that education and that honesty, it's really just experiences around failure, right? And I love where you're going with that, Henry, because I 100% agree. I think, Joy, to your point, I think us becoming really transparent and having humility and accountability was huge in 2022. I think we all kind of said, all right, we're getting beat up on the field out here, guys. Like, what we got to true up. And I know, Wes, I mean, that's one of the things you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I always talk about mistaking your way to success. And there's a huge element to that because that's the way we all learn. And none of us really have anything put together. You know, how many times do we all have this conversation about, you know, that imposter that's sitting there on your shoulder? Like, I should not be doing this. I should not be saying this. I should not be in front of people. And we all feel like that. And the reality is we're all, to a large degree, we're just learning from each other. We're figuring this out as we go, and we don't have the answers. And you see that in the output of the mistakes we all make. That's great. We should celebrate those things. We should embrace them and love them because I'm seeing this. We grow up through mistaking. We don't grow up through succeeding.
Yeah.
No.
I love that.
No, in fact, you oftentimes grow down through success, right? And
True.
oftentimes you grow to mediocrity through success. And I think it's failure and I think maybe that's a point that I'd like to take. Maybe when you talk about humility, there's really this aspect of just being okay with yourself. And I think when you get down to this, when you make failure the thing you are avoiding the most, I don't think you're being honest with yourself, right? How many times did you fall off a bicycle? How many times did you get hit in the face by the ball before you caught it? If you have eyes that point in different directions, right? So, yeah, I think it's about the failure. I agree with that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the second thing, right? And obviously 2022 obviously is built on looking back and understanding our failures. Some of the things that I know was a challenge in 2022 was, you know, there's been some conversation about things that started in 22. And Wes, do you want to lead off with our second thought for 2022?
Yeah, I don't remember what that second thought is. Are we talking about what's happening just in the regulatory and insurance landscape? Was that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure I didn't go totally off into left field.
He's like, I'm on another track, Juan.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So
It encompasses both of my points, but I'll come
Yeah.
up with new ones. I don't even care.
How about this? I'll get us kicked off, and then Matt, you just jump in deeper. How about
All right,
that? So,
fair.
yeah, we're seeing this, right? I mean, we've seen for a while what's happening. We are seeing MSPs get picked up in the regulatory landscape, right? Where Matt's going to talk about that in a minute. No doubt, that is a ball that is moving that cannot be stopped, but it's slow moving. It's going to take time to get there. We're going to see that in iterative steps. But what we've seen for a while, and I even mentioned this on a keynote stage a while back, was we're going to 2 years ago. It was insurance is going to push this further than and faster than anything else because they're the ones with the teeth. They're the ones that have the ability to say, this is what we will cover and this is what we won't, which gives them the right to say, this is an investment that we're going to make that is risk aligned with us, right? In other words, this is a category of security maturity that we're okay with, and we will take the risk on you and covering you. We will not cover you over here because of what you're doing. And I'll just say this quickly. I run into all these conversations with clients, CEOs that have been stingy, that have not understood security, that don't want to budge, don't want to move. And then big bad insurance comes in and forces something on them. And here's what they do. They don't just go, oh, that's so wonderful. They go, but fine, we'll do it anyway. Not kicking and screaming, but I get it. I'm not happy about it, but I'll do it. Yeah. That's great. That's a step forward for us, right? And so we're seeing insurance really push that needle for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I would say you guys have... Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, after you, sir. We'll have us a Canadian standoff.
Well, I would just call you guys out for the amazing work you guys have done to help further that, because a large part of it starts with just the awareness for MSPs of the amount of liability that they've been holding for their clients. And this wider world of cybersecurity and regulatory compliance that if they don't know that it's coming, they definitely should, but just, that education piece and building that awareness, you guys have done an amazing job over this last year in doing that and continue to.
Well, I'll take on what Wes said, and I'll actually I don't know who this is because their privacy settings are set efficiently, and I appreciate you. But agreed, insurance companies will regulate MSPs far faster and probably more effectively than the government. And I'll touch on this, right? So my two pieces that tie to what Wes was saying, Juan, would have been, the first one is we had Congress for the first time define MSP. That was part of the Omnibus Bill in March of last year, and it was part of CIRCIA, or Critical Infrastructure Reporting Act. And so as you look at this, it says if you're touching technology, and it's not all that landmark, right? It's not all that watershed at this stage. What it is, however, is a glimpse of a awakening beast that takes a very long time, understanding the risk and starting to matriculate the end of it, right? At some point, there was a risk of looking funny with a haircut. And so for God's sakes, the Board of Cosmetology system was born across the United States. We're heading there with us from a cyber perspective. Okay, that's my opinion. I think the second piece, though, is actually the more quick vector, or the faster vector, in the sense that you had Travelers Insurance shoot the first shot 2 years ago when they said you need switch MFA. You need MFA. But in its own right, it was really just, I think, organized gambling trying to change the table stakes at the table. And it was smart of them, and it was the right thing. But now in the last year, they've taken a data-centric approach. They've learned, I'll tell you anecdotally, and then I'll move on, but they've learned that in the front of the airplane one time, there were these two guys sitting there just talking deep cybersecurity topics in this very strategic way. And I'm like, this is amazing. Are you guys engineers? Are you cyber guys? Insurance adjusters. And the interesting part of that was they started to understand. I stole that story. So whoever I stole that story from, y'all tell me. I don't remember, but there's a guy telling me that. But the point is that change has happened, and we're seeing this education at the insurance level. Wes is a part of that even. I mean, directly, right? And as you see that play out, they then sued. Travelers Insurance sued in July a company called ICS. And they said, hey, listen, you had a breach 2 years ago. We paid X dollars. It was based on this. And we're going to rescind this policy. What's interesting about rescission is it says you lied, you committed fraud. And typically in most states, if you commit fraud on an application, the most you're going to get is your premiums back, which means there was a clawback of those $8,000 or $20,000 in premiums, and they took their $3 million back. And as you get that into understanding, that starts to set that precedent of insurance clamoring to solve this. And as they understand the value of MSPs, you better bet that's going to be the fastest focus of a like you call a force multiplier. If we can make all these MSPs comply, then the constituency below that is an even larger factor. And so I think last year was the year of insurance shaping up to be data-centric. Now, they don't have the answer yet.
Yeah.
but they are
True.
definitely data centric now, in my opinion. So
I love those points, and I think it's really important. And I know, Joy, one of the things that you talked about from 2022 was, no person left behind, right? That whole mantra behind that. So as we think about some of the things that shaped up in 22, as Matt and Wes are mentioning, what is your thoughts on that? You talked about that no person left behind. What is your mantra there?
Well, I think that the underlying reality of this is that we are all pulling together to understand either our industry starts to give ourselves a bar and a criteria to meet, or it's going to be handed to us.
Yeah.
And we're actually seeing this. We have a microcosm happening with the CMMC ecosystem and what's happening for those MSPs that have clients in the defense industrial base, where 2022 became the year of reality for the MSPs that support those clients, that
That's
all
fair.
of a sudden said, well, all right, so 800-171, I'm not allowed to just say, yes, I do your antivirus and your patch management and vulnerability scanning. I actually have to prove it. I have to put into the contract exactly how I perform these capabilities on your behalf and where we share responsibility. And SH blank T got real really fast for those MSPs. So what it did is it forced a segment of the MSP population to say, I'm walking away from this. I don't think I can do it. And those that are staying in, this is for me where the no man left behind comes in, is that we're going to have to find a way to do this where we live, eat, and breathe that specific framework if we're going to stay in that industry, right? If we're going to support that industry. And that means that at the most foundational aspect of how we perform our services as an MSP, everything has to be rethought. Our security stack, our own behavior, and the way that we deliver services, and security culture overall becomes the only way that is successful. So y'all know me. I've been talking about security culture since 2014, how important the culture is at the MSP. And not only do we have to do that internally in order for our own frameworks that we choose to align with to be fully baked in, it's the only way that we're going to be able to guide our clients in doing that.
I like that.
I have another thought of what changed last year in that same vein of no man left behind, or no person left behind, so that we can be more inclusive. But this understanding of that was, look at the way conferences changed last year, right? If we look at Right of Boom, when Andrew Morgan and team stepped out and said, just educate, don't you dare talk about your product, right? Tying into that understanding, right? Like tying it around a theme, thematically around Sunil Yu's Right of Boom and the understanding where stuff fits. Like that was such a crystallizing moment for so many MSPs that sat there. I watched their face make the same moment I made with you, Joy, in 2016, right? Of going, oh my God, I didn't know how much I didn't know. And I think to your point earlier, we talk about the buckets. I tell my kids this. I said, there's 3 buckets in life. You have what you know. That's things that you have contextualized, that you believe you understand to some degree of percentage, right? There's what you don't know. There might be things that you know that drift in between those 2 buckets, right? You don't know, but how do you know you don't know it? Is because you have contextual anchors, right? If you touch stove hot, you don't know how stove hot. That might be a new learning bucket. How stove hot? Oh, handle. When I turn this knob, now stove hot, right? So you get into this conversation of learning on things you know by contextual anchors for don't know. But then there's this last bucket, and that's the don't know you don't know bucket. And it's the bucket of ignorance, right? There's no context to understand something around it. It's why my grandmother still referred to my computer as that magic box, right? There was no understanding of electricity and transistors and the way they functioned and resistance and those things. So the point being, I think what this year has been is so many people have had stuff in their don't know they don't know bucket dumped heartily into their don't know bucket, right? And I think that has driven this pursuance of the education around it. Maybe I'm just being optimistic. Go ahead.
Can I kind of take a bit of a hot take on that? Because you're right, Matt, and maybe I'm just going to say this now while I have the independence to say it, and then maybe one day I'll eat these words. But when you talked about, like this organic creation of, like, I call it like Among Us content that's made by us, among us, for us, that is so pure and so needed. And the conference space in particular has needed that. And I'm not calling out anyone in particular, so do not read into this. but there's a lot of money that goes into conferences. We know that, right? And there should be. That's okay.
Sure.
But what happens so often is because so much money gets injected into this, it just becomes who pays for the pitch. And
Yeah.
we don't know that we're being pitched. There's nothing wrong with paying to speak somewhere. I get that, right? But like when that's the motive, then a lot of times you have less of a checking of, is the content pure? Is this educational for us? Is it really pushing us along? And that's why I do love Andrew's approach of, I'm going to direct what we're doing at Write a Boom. And then what you see with MSP GeekCon is another one I'll call out.
Yeah, great one.
Very intentional community of us, from us, for us. And I celebrate that, because that goes part and parcel with a lot of what we're talking about today. Is like literally none of us on the call today are pitching or selling something. That's not the point.
Right.
We want more of this. And if you're listening today and you're one of those people, you're welcome here. There's one, Adam Evans was on. I saw him chatting a minute ago.
Yeah.
Adam
Love
sort
Adam.
of came to life.
That's a big
last
heart
year.
right there.
Right. And isn't that awesome? Adam has skill sets that none of us on this call have. And so with him coming to life and sharing his message, that should be celebrated. So if you're listening today and you got a voice and you got a message and you got a thought, get it out there, because we're all better for it. And don't just say, oh, well, it's been covered. Someone else is doing that. I don't have a voice. Yes, you do. Get out there and share it.
Right.
I agree.
Well, and that isn't that the call out though, Wes, right? When you talk about this, it's everyone's a creator.
Right.
I mean, and Eric Bowles has been a big champion of this for a long time. And, you look back at Gary Vaynerchuk and the difference from a wine selling ordeal to the leader in thought leadership around marketing in at least this organic content space, pulls out a stupid cell phone, records his thoughts, right? Now, are they matriculated and are they intelligent? Do they drive a point with very few words? Yes, there's a masterfulness that goes into that. But I think it's that everyone should be talking about things. This is, if you are thinking about thought leadership being the equity, then go have thoughts. I used to tell people when they ask, why do you do all these conferences? Why do you get involved everywhere where they ask you to, for the most part? And the answer was, you can't be a thought leader if you're not sharing your thoughts and finding out what's wrong and learning and going forward and being corrected or pulled aside and asked questions.
And
There's so many intelligent.
Go ahead, Henry.
No, I was just going to say, there's so many intelligent people on this channel too, that with so much to offer. And it's not like the space is getting any simpler. I mean, the growing complexity of everything is mind-boggling, and you can't be an expert in all things. So identifying those people that have value to add and pour into you, and building that group of advisors in your team to help you, I think is crucial.
Yeah.
Joe, you were going to say something.
Well, just the being corrected and being open-minded and asking questions. That's one of the most important things I did over the last year, was start to teach assessors a certification course and talk about daunting. Like, I was like, who am I to be teaching assessors? And I don't let that ever stop me, because I learn so much when I teach these classes. And over time, I become a very good instructor, because I already can get in front of what I know people are going to be asking. But just like Adam Evans, I have this attitude of, I'm going to tell people what I don't know and ask them for help. Reach out my hand, and I'm always have a hand behind me where I'm pulling somebody else along. I think it's really important for us as a community.
And I think that, and I say this often, I don't know everything, but I share where I failed every single place that I go. And then that's the big thing about leading the community forward, is just being transparent about it, helping, helping people move around those skinned elbows and bruised knees. But also looking at it from a different lens. When I met Matt Lee, I remember when we first met, he goes, I don't know if I like you, but what you're saying might be just right. And I don't know, it's in my head, and I don't know why it's in my head, but I'm going to have to think about this. I'll let you know if I like
I've gotten softer, Juan. I don't start with that anymore. I second with
And
that.
to this day, we wonder if he still does like you.
I'm pretty sure he
I love
still
me some
doesn't,
Juan.
but he tolerates me, because we know that we look at things from a different lens, right? And it's like, he looks at it from the tech side, I look at it from the business side, and that's the difference, right? So, and it's really funny to believe that we're both techs in our own rights. But
I remember the exact conversation, actually. I even remember where we were standing.
Oh, I
It was
remember it
about
too.
MSP points in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So, and I think that, and I didn't say that. Actually, Keith says, Juan says, I told him I know everything. That is not true, Keith. I don't know anything, actually. Sitting in this room, I feel small. right? And I think that, to your point, what you mentioned a minute ago, Wes, a lot of us feel that way. And I think that in 2022, if I look back, there was a year of growth there. And I think that the MSP community, again, through transparency, vulnerability, and just being truly honest about where we're at, we grew a little bit. So that's one of my takes on 2022. But Henry, I know you had an interesting take on what you see in 2022. What's your thought, buddy?
Man, there were a lot of interesting things that happened, but I think one of the undersung developments of 2022 is the whole RPA hyper automation piece that I think is really going to revolutionize
True story.
MSPs moving forward. And I don't know that it got enough press for how instrumental it's going to be for MSPs moving forward. And Wes, I know you're pretty knowledgeable into that area, but
just pulled
yeah,
my string, Henry.
Yeah.
You sorry bastard. You know, you're 100% right. But here's the point. Let's talk about the factors coming together in 2022. I always talk about this on stage. I said, listen, if I start a company today, if I close my eyes and dream, and me and Wes were starting this awesome company, is there any chance I spin up a server? Is there any chance I even rent data center or colo or even Azure resources for that, or AWS? Probably not, unless I'm writing code or hosting a platform in some form. So the reality is, if your competitor starting up today is faster, more flexible, more normalized, meaning instead of me having server 2008, 8R2, 12, 12R2, 16, 19, force function 2003, 3R2, 8, 8R2, instead of having all those variables, different infrastructure, different virtualization, nope, Graph API, Azure resources, these types of things. And so when that density comes down to that number of variables, when you now have a very hundreds of variables instead of millions of variables, RPA and the automation capabilities that can happen can automate experiences. You can actually onboard a customer, have the first email that goes out with the video ready and curated, have the project plan kick off for creating the actual detailed knowledge gaps and things about what the company does, onboarding their MFA, onboarding. You could actually script the experience of human resources and technical. Yeah, it's nuts.
The complexity that we were talking about too, that's growing. You need a force multiplier, and that is a force multiplier for MSPs, whether they realize it yet or not.
Or it's a commodity replacement, right? Like that's a commodity at some point. That's table stakes. So anyways, sorry, go ahead, Wes.
No, you're good. I agree. I think I like that you mentioned that, because whether you call it RPA or not, what we're really talking about is like this push for, maybe I'll say it this way. When we innovate, what comes next is we automate. Automate always follows after innovate, because we push the needle on something. We're doing something we've never done before. We're like, wow, this is cool. This is solving for a problem. But then we run into that. How do we scale that? And that's where innovation always comes. You look at IT. No MSP really cared about automating anything in the beginning, but they're like, I'm going to start doing this managed service journey.
Pause. Let's talk about it this way. Let's talk about just a process or a project. No MSP cared about writing it down because they had heroes, people that could come in and do the tech work. But when they wanted to scale, they now made it a process that you referenced in IT or some other story, right? So anyways, Wes, continue. But I wanted to take it down right there to the nut and some bolts. Like,
no, that's it, right? And so you see this in the original IT journey. That's where automation came in after we started innovating a managed service delivery model. You see it in security right now of like, we push the envelope and like, wow, we have these alerts and this enriched stuff we're seeing. Now how to automate, because I can't scale this. And we're seeing it come back full circle again into IT. And I would even say as an MSP, and there was good conversation, I think Eric started, of like, what is an MSP? Should we even call them that anymore? But I do think the future of MSPs is you're going to get into professional services, and you're going to be a digital transformation leader for your SMEs, and you've got to start preparing for that. Yeah, because you're going to start walking to that real estate agency and say, hey, we've been managing your IT for a while, but can we take a look at your business processes and understand, look at this, like all this PDF trading you're doing, and blah, 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 blah. That's the future.
And here's the irony in that. You can't deliver security in a vacuum. Take that as a hot take. You can't deliver security without knowing the data. And if you are just now asking about their business processes, you are not delivering security.
Yep.
Like that's the end of the day. I mean,
and this is the thing, right? I started talking about this earlier before 2022, and I was talking about customer experience as a service, right? And it's really the technology that it takes to deliver an experience in some meaningful fashion, right? So I always look at it from a business lens. It's like, I'm talking to business owners. I need to be talking about business things instead of tech things, right? And that's where I think, to your point, Wes, we know the tech. We understand the innovation, right? And with everything that's coming about, now we're just making it more simple for a click, buy, deliver programming, right? And again, back to what are we trying to deliver? And that's the customer experience and that automation aspect. So I'm with you guys on this thing. I think 2022 helped us a lot there. I said this back in early 2000s or in 2020 was that during the pandemic, technology became the sure footing in the quicksand of the pandemic, right? So like I think that we understood there, that's the point. We started innovating into 2021 and 2022. And now we're starting to see that rapid aspect of it. And now we're going to start focusing on how we deliver these business outcomes. So I'm 100% with you guys on this thing. I'm there. I can't wait to see it, but you're right. I like where we're going with it. To your point, Matt, we definitely need to start securing it.
Yeah. Well, and
So-
I think well, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think what we're waking up to is this convergence of we're being commoditized in the things that have now been automatable, right? Look at what you did in RMMs for the last 10 years. Look at the things we did to make, W2 multiplier success and how we got better and better and more efficient at doing those things, better processes, more repeatable, less Matt Lee's talking in the meeting, more others, right? You start getting into that kind of understanding as an MSP. And the same things are now being woken up to in security. It's that same understanding of we are now having commoditization of what we do from an automation perspective. How do we get deeper in their business? As Eric says, take a seat at the table, right? And in their business. And how can I make you better with the same tools? I talk about it this way because I love analogies. If I have a hockey team and I'm coaching it, and they all have the same salary cap, they're all basically the same speed players, they all have basically the same skills. How do I put them together and beat the other team if I have the same tools? I coach them better. I understand their business needs and what they do better and well as this player or that player. And I think that's where we're getting to is now that the technology is simply, I'm going to turn on, to Eric's point earlier, a cloud business in a weekend. How do you take that same Microsoft Teams and make them better with it? How do you take that same email capability and make them better with it? How do you make them more efficient with it? How do you make them more secure with it? All of those things come into play. And then that means you have to have a deep relationship with the business. Well, we've wanted a seat at the table. And then maybe we'll call last year the beginning of seat at the table year. You got brought in for that insurance document, to Wes's point, and had to answer it, right? You got brought in to say, hey, what value are you providing? And I learned this lesson. When we were as an MSP, we took everyone to Azure AD, Intune management, SharePoint from local. It was this distributed ag company that had people all over the country that were suffering from VPNs and low internet speeds. And when we did it, they fired us within about 3 months. Mm-hmm. And the reason was, Matt, everything works. I don't have any challenges. Your ticket counts have dropped significantly. In fact, patching is great and our security is getting better. Yep. And I think what I learned that minute was our value statement was going to change. And that value statement had to be business focused. It had to be about how do I make you better? How do I help you keep growing? How do I keep you attracting better talent? How do I help you be a thought leader in your space? How do I, right? And all of those things. And so I think my thought is last year had a big component of that.
I agree with you 100%.
Well, it changed the conversation that you were having with the end user or the client, that it's about what's good for me and my IT business. It's about what's good for you and your business and how we, use what I can do to further your business.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting. The more that we get into those business processes for ourselves and for our clients, the more I see that those mature MSPs are the ones that are out there doing a lot of this automation, and they're seeing, okay, this is repetitive now. Now that I understand every part of the process in order for us to replicate this from one project to the next. And it's interesting to me, the amount of MSP people that are going into the vendor community to help develop those vendor solutions now, right? You didn't see this 5-6 years ago. It was really a different makeup of the vendor community.
Yeah, you did. I spent most of my time doing that time. But
but you were ahead of the curve. You were ahead of the curve. Come on. Everybody was ahead of the curve. And I talked about 2022 being the year of the strategic MSP. And the hopes was that MSPs would become more strategic, more than technical. We understand the tech. The tech is there. Everything is in front of us. But, it's really moving into that strategy component of, I need to understand how to be strategic in my business, right? And really moving myself forward into this to adopt new technologies and be flexible to focus on what's really important.
I think I'm going to pull a string here. I as we've kind of gone into that, we've realized that we really need better definitions on, what is an MSP, is to the point earlier, or what
Yeah.
is an MSSP? What's a pen test? What truly makes these different technologies
Nomenclaturally, right?
happen?
Like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
And I
you
think
know
that,
what? Oh, sorry.
go
Keep
ahead.
going, Henry.
No, go ahead.
This is a
Yeah,
West string.
just going to
Go
very
ahead.
quickly say you are right. We struggle with this in security. We don't have taxonomies and accepted definitions for very much of the security landscape. And that's a big, massive problem. Like Aaron Chernin always talks about, if I buy a CPU and you give me a GPU, I'll tell you right away the difference between the two, because those are
Yeah.
accepted definitions and terms. We largely don't have that in security.
Well, and I think that's kind of the Carter has pills effect, right? Like, I think there's a challenge of, in a vacuum and market where there is a lot of low maturity. And I don't mean this negatively or diminutively in any way, but the maturity level of the overall MSP around security is very low, in my opinion. And so when you have that, and this doesn't stop here, that goes to corporate, that goes to internal enterprise capabilities. I'm not going to stop at any one of those genres. But as it starts, we've defined these things through Gartner. Gartner writes most of our stuff. What's XDR? It's what Gartner called it. What's MDR? It's what Gartner called it. What's, like, you get into these conversations where even not only do we have a taxonomy we all agree on, but it's usually handed to us by marketing people who don't understand the product. And you know, that also creates that challenge. And that brings
Well,
me, Juan, to, or go ahead, Henry.
no, go ahead. You let me
Well, I was going to say,
earlier. It's all you now.
well, that's what I was going to say. That brings me to my next big thing I think I've seen shift. And y'all tell me what your thoughts are on this. I think we have, for the first time, seen enough maturity pressure from the MSP's growth and their own capabilities and the market demands and insurance, all these things, to actually drive vendors to start considering their tech debt, their security challenges, their lack of their own growth to be actually a business investment. What do y'all think about that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think
I'll tell
MSPs
you
are
just
getting
from
better about
this.
asking the right questions.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and from the CMMC perspective, we've had to go out and have conversations with many vendors about the criteria and their own shared responsibility matrix. And many of the vendors had no clue at the beginning of 2022 what the shared responsibility matrix was.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of education in the community just around, hey, let's really be clear where you leave off and the MSP starts, because the MSP actually has to produce that as evidence for part of the CMMC process. And then they have to do that for themselves with the client. So, you know, it's the triangle of the three of us, the providers, the clients, and the vendor community, that really need to come together on who's doing what.
Joey, those are wise words, my friend. And you see this, right? When you talk to the Brad Grosses of the world, Brad's on chat. By the way, he was your
I love
invisible poster, Matt.
Good for him and his
Yeah,
son.
that
I'm
was
proud
Brad.
of him.
You know, he'll tell you straight up, you know, you better look at your MSAs and understand that you are delineating your service responsibility and where you end up, right? And
Yep.
same thing when you talk to folks that have gone through a breach, and the first thing their client says to them is, "I thought you handled all that for us. Like, what are you talking about? I'm coming after you for this because you're my IT person." We've been talking about that for a while now, for a few years, but this is coming full circle, because you have to understand your best clients become sometimes your worst enemies in the aftermath of a breach. And Joy, you're exactly right. If we're delineating and clearly explaining what we're doing and where we pick up their responsibilities in this, it goes a really long way in getting their buy-in so that you can actually get them to do the things that we need them to do. And it's less about, you know, oh, you don't want to do it, so I'm just going to slap you this disclaimer or this whatever, you know, that you choose not to have antiviruses.
Right.
You think it's, you know, made by the government. They're looking at everything you do, right? It's like,
Which
no,
I'm
it's
a reformed sinner on that one, right? I'll tell you about that. I'm at church
I want to hear.
right
Go
now.
jump in.
So
Tell me.
I was the guy that was like, I understood the marketing value of that pit in the stomach. I understood the signing value of that implication. But I think the challenge is that I didn't really understand at that time the risk I was actually proving. And here's what I'll tell you.
100%.
When you go to court and it's about reasonableness, and you're trying to drive reasonableness to a jury, and you're saying, was it reasonable for you to say, yes, client, I'm done asking. You cannot have MFA. We're cool. You accept the risk. I'm great. I'm good. Fine. We'll never ask you about it again. Or was it reasonable as a practitioner to start saying, here's my baseline. If my client doesn't have MFA by X period of time, these are the next steps for me, and I'm going to follow them, and then I do it, right? Those are different reasonableness statements. And I think that's the challenge, is by getting that in writing, you're actually proving that you were okay with it. You were complicit in their understanding of their own risk. You gave them bad advice. It'd be like me as an investment advisor when I was subject by FINRA, getting rid of a life insurance policy with an age of about 30 to replace it with a life insurance policy of an age of 70. I have done them a disservice. There is almost no compliance reason I could make that work. There's almost no cost of insurance that could make that work. There's almost nothing I could argue that makes that make sense. But if I simply said the client understands the risk and they've lost $35,000, please sign here, that doesn't happen in FINRA anymore. And you get into these conversations of a fiduciary responsibility. And I think that is why I'm a reform center on this. I was the preacher of that. I'm now still a big fan, though, of saying, I'm turning this on. If you don't want it, please come see me. And that might be the decision of an exit. Because I just turned on enough revenue. Yeah, sorry.
Hit the show on Keith's comment, because Keith just nailed it.
Yeah,
right there.
You've got it right there.
This one right here. Yep.
Yeah.
Now you get into the laws of unscrupulous advantage, waivers of admission or failure to educate. Preach it. You just did it in less words. You're smarter than me. See? I just said it. It's proven.
Well, the insurance industry is going to help to close that gap as well, like in the MFA example.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, very much so.
And
go ahead, Henry.
No, I think I've got some lag here, so I apologize. But
you're good.
no, that's there's certainly the insurance industry is really driving, because of the fiscal side of that. They're going to drive a lot of those definitions for us, and we need to have a seat at that table to make sure that we have a part of whatever that future regulation is going to become that governs us.
Well, it's, I think we're okay to talk about Trustmark as a thing that happened last year. If you guys are cool with it, I've got a little bit of insider information, as most of you do as well, but I think I can put the fences on what's public. But as you also see it, last year was the year of frameworks, right?
Yep.
Joy, you've talked to me about a framework since 2016 when I first took your class. Okay, so I'll say for the proletariat, the overall masses, last year has become the year of the frameworks, where people understand that if I follow an external guide and I don't make it up and shoot from the hip, I am much more defensible in my actions by doing so. Like that basic, simple
100%.
premise.
That's good.
But insurance companies have too. And so have now vendors. And so we're getting a common language, to your point, being derived from the adherence of frameworks. CMMC is another great example of that from 800-171 and the things that it brings in, the practices. And so we're normalizing the framework language, I think, through that.
And let's just, can we say that 2022, as a generalist statement, was a year of the fact that we require some frameworks or we need to be making movements forward. I think, as an overtone from all of last year, we understand that there's liability associated with all of the things that we're doing, because technology has moved super fast. The holes that we allowed to be prevalent in the environment was the ones that no one wanted to spend money on, which was security. So now we have this huge hole that we have to backfill, right? And now we have to the bridge across this chasm is liability, right? So either you're going to jump or you're going to be held with liability. And I think that's the hard part, right? And that's where the hard conversations have to come in. And now you have to have these business cases to make people move forward. And it's really interesting to think about that, right? So I don't know, can we agree that last year was the year we understand that now more than ever, we have more liability than ever?
Yeah, there's some great points on that too, right? Look at the SEC. You have a couple of actions. You have the Uber piece playing out, where you actually have some real criminal liability for actions taken in the just exposition of protecting a company. But you also have the SEC saying, hey, we'd really like to see a member of your board be somebody that has cyber capabilities. Why? Well, it's the same understanding of when Sarbanes-Oxley played out. We'd really like to have someone with financial capabilities on your board, so I can put them in handcuffs when they actually still willingly do the things they know are wrong, because they had the subject matter expertise to do it, and they failed. When you start looking at that same play out, you're seeing both the public investment side of things play that way. I had a deep conversation with several different private equity players this last year, and they're starting to understand. They're actually getting some of the real basic conversations in assessing risk with a company that I'd never thought I'd see, especially in your, sub 100 million capacitance VEs and private equity players. So you're seeing this kind of matriculation of risk, to your point, and this understanding of we have liability and it can be paid. And as you see that play out through this kind of growing humility and transparency around, or lack thereof, and the reaction of the public now driving the market. Like, look at Microsoft. They were the first ones to say our source code was actually touched. They started calling it the Microsoft doctrine for that first 6 or 7 months. Yeah. But then afterwards, you have people that are actually very quick to respond, like Cisco, that just says, here's what happened. Here's we know it. This is the data we got. And you saw that time of response drop drastically. And when it hasn't, if you go look in Australia with the Medibank deal, that's going to be millions and millions and millions of dollars in lawsuits. You've already got 3 lawsuits on the most recent. I can't talk about, but you've got several lawsuits in play about several different incidents that we would have never seen before. Look at Rackspace. Would they have 2 class actions before they even got services moved off? We're seeing a change in the public and the litigious aspect of this as well. And I think there'll be some watershed cases that come out of 2022.
I agree. And I want to share just from a national perspective and Joy, before we even started the live stream, I loved how you were talking about like your mission of why you're doing what you're doing. And I want to share a quote that came from Jen Easterly, who's the director of CISA. This came in last year, and I don't know why we haven't talked about this enough, but you see the signaling, like Matt, you mentioned CIRCIA. We now have in motion mandatory reporting of cyber incidents. We know why, because the federal government wants to get their hands around what's the volume, what's the impact, where's it happening. We don't really have a mechanism for that. But listen to this quote. So Jen Easterly said this herself. She says, "I don't have a sense across the board, but it seems to me that voluntary standards are probably not getting the job done. And there's probably some sort of rule for making some of these standards mandatory to include notification," right? So we're starting with notification, but there is definitely a movement here where we're saying from the top down, why have we not standardized so many of these things? We have so many other standards. We have GAP standards in accounting, right? We have safety standards with OSHA. Why is it that cybersecurity is still a stepchild that still seems left behind and still seems so separate from the organization in an unprofessional, ad hoc way? That's got to get corrected. And so
And
I think we're just
frankly,
seeing that in motion, Joy.
we should be leading that charge. It's like the carrot and the stick thing. Nobody wants the stick chasing us. Nobody. No. And, this is why for years I've been saying this. And I think that when you align to a framework, whichever one you choose, you're putting yourself on a path. You're going to be maturing everything in your organization. But most importantly, you have a way of measuring, right? That's what the framework does, is it gives you a way of measuring what that progress is. We really have to be able to come together and get in front of this. Nobody wants it to be chasing us down.
Yeah, and that brings me back to Trustmark and why I bring it up. Last year was this density of thought, leadership, knowledge, drive. We had intent. We had, capabilities growing. But I think, to your point, at some point we have to say, what's a baseline? What's good enough? What is what we should be responsible for? What is the cost baseline supposed to be? What is what should a good shared responsibility matrix look like? What should and I think that's what's so cool is if you look at what Chris Johnson and team are doing over there with Trustmark at CompTIA, they've reworked it around all of
100%.
CIS, all of extensibility into some of these other New York financial systems controls, all these things, but they're all framework based. They're coming to a common language that's auditable, that's scalable, that we can find the most empirical difference of someone didn't do this control and it made this much difference, right? And so I think we're going to come to a self-regulatory body. And I think the next piece that's needed, and I don't know who all is watching or listening, but down the road, we will need congressional support to drive a self-regulatory body at some point. So I think those are the 2 pieces have to come together, but the density has to start here. And we have to grow that type of, I have Trustmark, I'm audited. That's what you should be from a marketing perspective and driving that. But at some point, it's got to encompass both MSPs or whatever we define ourselves as, but also internal techs, internal people. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk about that real quick. And Henry, did you have a quick comment before I move us on?
He did come off mute a couple times.
No, you're fine.
So let's talk about that, right? So 2022, looking back, obviously, we know we need to do something. One of the things, and I think, I'm going to let you lead off here, Wes, let's talk about what do we need to do different? Like what obviously 2022, what were some of the views that you have that you think we should be doing differently?
Well, a little bit of a hot take. I mean, we got lucky last year. Let me just, I don't normally be the pessimist. I try to be the optimist CISO in the room, right? But let's take a bit of a pessimistic approach. We got lucky. We didn't see another 2021 incident like we saw on July 4th. We were fortunate for that. I'm thankful for that. May we never see it again. But I don't think it's because we saw this immediate hardening in our defenses across the board. I think it was yet another wake up moment. We've continued to see how vulnerable the supply chain is. I don't think from the large vendors we've seen enough progress. And I'm not talking about just MSP large vendors, right? I'm just across the board. So I think that we dodged some bullets. And I think you can even attribute some of that to the conflict in Ukraine, with eyes being elsewhere. The insurance landscape corroborates this. We've seen a reduction in loss ratios. This is wonderful, right? But Juan, I think where I want to really go to is I worry about 2023. I worry about 2024 because we've made progress. We now understand, this progress and push towards standards and regulation. I applaud it, but we have not gotten anywhere close to the destination of maturity across the board, speaking for all MSPs. There are leading MSPs that are doing amazing jobs, but we are still, I think, pretty grossly far behind. And I just hope that if you're listening today, I'm not trying to scare you into action. I'm just trying to say, I think it's reasonable for us all to say we dodged bullets last year that I'm thankful for, but it wasn't because, we've done all these amazing, powerful things. So we have a lot to do in 2023. And I think a big push to that is saying, I will get to adoption. I will pick up CIS. I will pick up Trustmark. I will begin to standardize this with my clients. I will begin to say, I'm not taking no for an answer in what we need to be doing for our clients. I will take that education journey and start teaching them what matters. That's, I think, what we've got to focus on this year.
Yeah. And I know you got to hop. So I wanted to capture that because I think, this year I coined it as the year of education, the year of community. It's going to take a community to be really effective together. And we need to learn. We need to learn as much as we possibly can, as fast as we can, and understand all of those aspects. Joey, you've said this a lot, and I've watched you learn over the years and go from, starting at the bottom to like now this cybersecurity superstar. I mean, you learned over a short period of time. And I think that you become amazing at it. Right. So that's your journey is one that I follow. And I know Matt and Wes and all of us do. So just know that
so
there's a lot of us.
I do want to give a voice to this real quickly. One of the things that I have loved in 2022 is seeing the amount of women who are starting to gain visibility in our space.
Yeah, true story.
We have some freaking amazing rock stars that are women in IT and cybersecurity. And if each of the four of you off the top of your head could like rattle off the names of 5 women right away that rock it in this industry, what I'd like to see in 2023 is each of you be able to rattle off the names of 20 women. And there is a theme that we saw happening in the chat about a seat at the table. It is really, to me, it's a passion that every time that you think about who should we bring into a conversation, grab the hand of a woman. One of the problems we have is that I've been told by some people in this industry, well, I only ever use this one woman because she was 20 years at the NSA. And I'm like, but all the other men that you have, that you lean on, not one
like
of them
this
has
idiot
20 years in the NSA. So let's help give a leg up because the entire ecosystem is better for the involvement of women.
Shout
That's
out.
a great call out.
I agree with that 100%. That's one of the reasons I'm at, with Tiffany, she's amazing. And there's amazing people that are out there. Jax is another one that's out there. That's awesome. I mean,
Alyssa Miller, Alyssa Knight.
Lisa Mitchell.
This Joy Beland. I don't know if y'all know her. She's pretty amazing.
If you all would everyone in chat just tag a lady that in the channel that you follow and really like?
I love that.
Blow it up.
2022 is the year of strong women in tech, and I appreciate that a lot, Joey.
Well, and I think maybe the conversation is also significantly more inclusivity, right? I think it's this 100%. Neurodiversity, diversity, right? All of these things are playing out in a world where the same way, and maybe I'm over summarizing, but the same way you have this one catalyzing moment where race and creed don't matter, and those organizational situations when you're in dire straits, right? We're in that mode where we're seeing this giant leap in, I think, inclusivity. I believe we're seeing all types be involved. I'm amazed by that. So yeah, great call out. We've already got a couple. Bobby's already popped in a few. Hannah O'Donnell, Morgan McBride, Amira Armand. Yep. Diana Giles also starting to crush it on her own space and growth there as well.
So I know we're rounding the
Phyllis Lee. Yeah, totally.
We're rounding the bases up, and I know we got to end because otherwise we're going to go all day. And I know Wes has to go because he's got to jump on a cyber call here in a minute. But real quick, just round table real quick. 2022, obviously, great look back, you guys. Awesome. what do you guys think? 2023, where are you going, Joey? What are you thinking? What's your take? We got about 5 minutes, each person about 1 minute. What are you thinking, Joey? Where are you going 2023?
My focus is 100% on the defense industrial base. I've got 2 little grandbabies now, and I want them to grow up in a free United States. So that's the heart of my mission, and I'm going to do that in any way that I can. And I'm also going to be grabbing the hand of many women to bring along with me.
Wes, where are you going, buddy? 2023.
Still very excited about continuing to solve this cyber insurance stuff with Fifth Wall Solutions and anyone else that wants to join this journey. It's not just us, it's anybody. So really excited about that. And also just really excited about continuing this mission of, to steal a term from Huntress, the rest of us, right? The 99% in security, right? Security is for all of us, from account reps to directors to success people to everybody. I want to bring them all together. Let's all get better. So those are probably my 2 big missions for this year.
Henry, where are we going, buddy?
A big thing for me is helping other MSPs and adopt a security framework in a more efficient way, and help raise that bar for everyone that's involved. And I know, Matt, you're involved on some of those things with me, but I think that that's going to be crucial for us to really move forward.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Matt, where are you at, buddy? Where are you at for 2023?
I have a similar mission to Joy in this understanding that if my kids, grandkids are going to have the same life, the same understanding and exposure of this virgin technology space that allows creativity and allows these life changes we've been through, then we better change some things. And so I think for me, it's going to be leaning into trying to focus on being more purposeful on where I spend my time. I've always said yes to everything, which put me in a position of 130 flights last year and the inability to really focus on things with the utmost attention. And I think I'll be trying to be more purposeful this year in what education mission I drive, but very much the same mission, the same goal. And I just ditto what Joy says, right? I love where I live, and I love the United States. And I think that if we're going to continue what we have to do to move forward, this year has to be faster and more exponentially growth than last year, and even next year, even more. So that's my mission this year. Nebulous as ever, but
yeah. Well,
thanks, man.
And thanks, Matt. I know or Wes, you got to go.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, so much.
Jump over to Cybercall if you guys are following Wes. But one of the big things, and again, circling, this whole conversation, I want to say thank you to all you guys for joining me here. My mission this year is education and community. I think we're not there yet. We need more education. And I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to keep doing this until we're all one happy community, and that we're all together and we're actually feeling like we're all super successful. So in 2024, when we're talking about and we're looking at in 2023, and we can say we made a difference, that's what I hope that we can do. And I'm really excited for that. And I really am excited for everybody that joined us today. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. We're going to keep this up. Me and Matt said we're going to kind of maybe keep playing with this and
maybe different guests, maybe different people to have their thoughts, maybe even give that same hand up that Joy was talking about, maybe allegedly, right, Juan? Allegedly.
Maybe, awesome. We might have to do an all woman one and I go off camera.
Yeah. We'd probably do better and have better conversation with you and me shutting off, wouldn't we, Juan? It's possible.
It could happen.
Joy, you laughed a little too hard at that. We're going to have a private conversation.
So
you guys are wonderful.
Well, I just want to say again, thank you to everyone that joined us here. Please, reach out to these wonderful people on LinkedIn, engage with them, be part of the community, be part of the conversation, keep the education going, keep sharing your stories, keep being humble, honest, and keep moving forward. And together we will make this happen. So 2023, cheers to all of you. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you all. Thank you all. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you.